Welcome to the Human Performance Podcast, where advances in fitness and strength and conditioning are discussed. This is the second episode, and we have recurring guest Pat Davidson, along with a new guest, Henry Lau. Today we'll be discussing what Human Performance live form entails, along with the mission statement. Also, we'll have a brief discussion about nutrition with Pat. So to introduce our first guest, Henry Lau, he is a coach, trainer at Next Level Athletic Training Center in Rhode Island.
What's going on?
Henry?
How's it going, Miguel?
That's going all right. So at the end of the day, I understand that this is simply one venture that you have, at least human performance-wise. You do other ventures. If you could go over those, that would be ideal.
Oh man, I didn't know we were gonna go into that. But yeah,
just talk about. Just like what is it, and
So right now, I'm also looking into creating a fish oil that's wild and sustainable. Not only that, but a lot of most supplement companies out there don't really put out what they put in their ingredients or what's in their supplements, and like no one regulates it. You could be taking a protein powder that has like melanin in it, just like the milk did. So and you'll never know until someone gets hurt. So what we're doing is giving a lot of transparency, showing like third-party testing and things like that. We're working over some things right now with it.
Awesome. And so to go off of that and to transition into what Human Performance live form is, how does it start, and what is the purpose of HPLF? Because you were the one that essentially started with, I think, Kevin Carr and Brendan Rurick, if I'm right?
Yeah. So we started it up also with Anna Taco.
Okay, there you go. Sorry about that.
We were attending like a lot of seminars. I think everyone does once you start getting into this field. Like you go to different seminars. Like mostly everyone knows about like the Perform Betters. But it was after a while it just seemed like it was a lot of people, and you never really get to know anyone there. You never really get to talk to people. I think that's like one of the biggest things too of going to seminars, like being able to meet people and actually talk to them and like understand like where they're coming from and like what views they have. And like it was so hard to do in like that big open seminar with like 6 different lectures going on, like or like 3 hands-on and like 3 different lectures going on, and it's just like too much at once. So what we want to do is we created like these little tiny forums where we didn't think anyone would come. Actually, we would just put it together, and like our first one was just like kind of like a powwow with all our friends, and I think it was 2 people that presented.
Where was the first one?
If I remember correctly, I think the first one was at Boston University.
Oh yeah, okay. So I was.
It was UMass Boston, wasn't it? Or it was Connor Ryan and it was somebody else presenting.
Yeah. Wait, you were there the first one? I can't remember.
I was there too. Yeah. Okay. I thought there was ones before it. So.
No, I think BU was the first one.
Was that a BU?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I remember doing 90 hip shifts up on the turf at BU.
Yeah. With their new facility. That was a nice facility too.
Yeah, because I invited Matt. Matt was like, "Can I bring someone?" And I was like, "Yeah, you can bring whoever you want." I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna bring my professor. He's like this guy who's beast in weights and like super smart." I was like, "Well, that sounds like the kind of guy we want."
Who the hell was that guy?
Oh man.
There you go. So if I were to be somebody uninitiated and not really understand what it is to go to different seminars like every other month or whatever, what would I expect if I were to attend one of these seminars of yours?
So our purpose now is kind of what we want to do is create a warm and nurturing environment for people. I took this away from like Donnell Bucha at the Citadel. We want to create an environment where everyone assumes positive intent for their interactions. Everyone coming to like seminars or going to continuing education, we want to get better. Like we want to learn, and I think this environment gives us, and it allows us to do it better than like say just some random environment of like a ton of people trying to like listen to one person. And like that was another thing too. Like listening to one person, it's like there's all these other smart people in the room, and like we can't hear what they're saying at all or what they're thinking. Right. So I think like making it into a smaller group allows us to have those views and like an open discussion to like generate ideas, like get the brain juices flowing basically.
I like that. Brain juice is all over the place. That's great.
I was waiting for somebody to make a juices flowing.
I stopped you before it could happen.
Miguel, because yours was way better than mine.
A lot more PG. It's another aspect of HPL.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to transition, there's another seminar or another live forum going to happen very soon, if I'm correct. Where is that one going to be held?
Yes.
And when?
So the next one we're having is August 30th on Saturday. It's going to be held actually in Rhode Island at Next Level. It's going to start around 4 p.m.
Okay, so it's at your facility in Rhode Island.
Yes.
Awesome. So what we'll do is, I think, Henry, you have a link for that. What I'll do is I'll attach that link to whatever medium, like on the YouTube page or the blog post, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think, I mean, especially like this next one is going to be amazing. I think it's going to be really, really good, especially just because of the people we have in it. And I think
can that be divulged? Okay, all right.
Actually, so, yeah. I mean, I could talk a little about it. Like, I think. Sure. Well, Pat's gonna be there. Pat's co-leading the movement dysfunction hands-on. That doesn't really need any introduction.
the most dysfunctional man ever telling you how to not be dysfunctional. I love it.
It's gonna be good.
Full circle. That's what it is. Full circle.
I know.
Yeah,
like
that's how it works.
You've experienced it. You know where you're coming from.
You have to be jacked up to care about not being jacked up.
Exactly. Then we're having Joe Banya go into some of the nitty-gritty about Olympic lifting and their applications in sport. And then those are our two hands-on. And then what I'm really excited about is our lecture. Dr. John Sullivan, he does a lot of CNS or like neural assessment and measurement for performance optimization. So like I had breakfast with him last week and we went over like a ton of topics, like how he used recovery in terms of like sleep, different types of modalities. He even like talked about using eye tracking software to improve performance in his like baseball and soccer athletes. And then like even more interesting was he started talking about his well, obviously he didn't go too deep into it because he can't, but the military aspect of like performance enhancement, how if they can gain an actual advantage, it's like these people live from that advantage. Like they die or live on these things. Like if something doesn't work, they're not going to use it. So it's like that high level. I mean, like imagine if we trained on that level. We wouldn't have
literally life or death.
Yeah, we wouldn't have all this like BS like squatting on both balls. Like even like some like the CrossFit stuff. Like I don't want to go like off a CrossFit tangent, but like more times than not, like the CrossFit programming is just like not optimal for like sport. Like not geared towards a certain goal. And like imagine if like this was like you were life and death. If you messed up on a squat, you programmed a squat program wrong, someone would die. Like you would put a lot more research into it.
That's a lot of consequence.
You might be mistaken there though, Henry, because I think that pretty soon people doing CrossFit will die. If they keep doing it, I mean, they're already getting real close with the rhabdo and like broken spines from snatches. So I think it's a natural progression, just like anything in our industry. They're making that like it'll be like they'll think they're making a lateralization from a broken spine, but it's really a progression when you hit death.
So no comment there. Nothing to be said about that, right?
I'm just throwing that out there for you.
So to bring it back before we go off on a CrossFit tangent.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah.
Where was the last live forum held at?
The last one was actually held in New York City at Archbishop Fitness.
There you go. I went to that one. I thought it was phenomenal. It's just one of those things where the forum just keeps on getting better and better with the format, the speakers, the quality of people, the quality of discussion. I just think it just gets better and better. And in reality, like, that's kind of where I want this podcast to go. So if anybody has any feedback, by all means, drop a comment, leave a message, whatever you got to do. Just want to get better. That's really what's in my head.
Yeah, I agree. And like, especially with the open forum part of this meeting, it's gonna be sick. We got some questions that I think a lot of people want like answers to, or like kind of want to discuss about that's like currently happening in our fitness industry. And then you'll probably have to attend to hear what we're gonna say. We're not gonna record any of this, so we just want to kind of keep that nurturing environment, not to have like people worry about what they're saying and like if it's gonna go online or not.
Right. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, because I'm very worried about what I say.
Maybe
I
not.
remember. I remember. What was this from a DNS course? Where was this at? Oh my gosh, so, what was this? Holy Cross? Was that one other
For
Yeah,
location?
the whole.
No, not DNS. One of the forums
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yep. I think I
with,
know. Yeah, Holy Cross.
with Jeff Oliver.
Yep.
I just remember recording a video of Pat rolling on the ground, doing some crazy like
Yes.
self-reflex locomotion or whatever it is, and I'll probably drop a link to that. But that was just I think that was one of the first times I really interacted with Pat. I was just like, what is going on here?
That's how it should be in one of your first times interacting with me. That's kind of the desired outcome.
Like you're on the ground, on your back, and then I hear you like gasping like it's a death rattle.
Yes.
Yeah, it's something you have
That's
to
how you.
experience.
That's commitment. That's commitment to an exhale right there.
That is commitment to an exhale. That's what it should be like for PRL.
Yeah. That's
But
how you
anyway.
change blood pH.
Agreed. Anyway, Henry, do you have any last comments? We're keeping this podcast relatively short, by the way, just because I understand everybody's time is of the essence.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think I have any other comment, but just like this is one HPF that you do not want to miss if you're gonna try to get in on it.
oh, I'm gonna miss it. I'm so.
Plus, well,
I'm
plus
so
we're getting catered by Chipotle too, so like how can you not?
Wow.
catered. Like every time I order a burrito from Chipotle, I always like watch them struggle to close the burrito. That's what I.
Hey, is there any way that we can get the rice with no cilantro? White rice, no cilantro. Making a special request about that.
Huh? I think we can do that. I'll
Yeah.
check actually.
Are you allergic?
I really, really hate cilantro. Like,
Oh,
on an epically high level.
it's funny you say that because like I was reading an article about that how like some people just like straight out hate cilantro because
Yeah,
like
it's like a
just the way
genetic.
yeah.
Yeah, tastes like dish soap.
Gosh, let me know how
Yeah,
you
no,
really
it's
feel.
like if there's like a tiniest bit of it in like a giant stew or something, I'm like, oh, there's cilantro in this, and it's like, how the hell could you even tell that? I'm like, because it tastes like somebody poured Ajax cleaner into this thing.
Does their brown rice have it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, but I wouldn't eat that either, so it's kind of.
Yeah.
Just don't eat any rice on it, Pat.
Well, if we could just have a bag of steak with like elastic band around it that could just go over my head like a horse, I'll go with that.
We might be able to make that modification. We'll see.
They're catering, so they have to, like, you know.
Henry Lau makes things happen. I've got a feeling that this.
Make sure you come dressed to the nines. Last time I went, Henry's been always dressed to the nines.
Oh well, this one's actually we have a lot of hands-on, so you guys should probably wear. Well, people that are attending are gonna wear like just regular gym clothes, so we can do assessments and then like participate in like the Olympic lifting and whatnot.
Good point. Don't listen to me. Listen to Henry. All right. All right. Thanks, Henry. Feel free to stick around for sure.
Yeah.
This is definitely going to be entertaining, talking with nutrition with Pat. And I always mention, we'll try to be relatively short, and it ends up going for the next 3 hours.
Well, what time did we start? I think we're like 15 minutes in, and it looks like it's 7:04 right now. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
you know, I'll do my best. I'll keep an eye on that time.
All right. Let's
So what are we
see.
shooting for
Let's
this?
see.
Like,
So the
40 minutes-ish for this whole podcast?
give
So
or take.
like maybe another 15, 20 minutes. We can do it.
We'll just let it roll and see where we're at the end.
All right.
So one of the articles that was posted on Show Me Strength was relatively controversial, as if nothing you do is already not. Talking about nutrition. Now I read it and I felt like I had to reread it at least once or twice more afterwards. If you could give a slight or a brief overview of what it entails. Let's have a talk about that.
Sure. So the point of the article was to get into discussing the impacts of nutritional strategies on your autonomic nervous system. So essentially what we have is that the autonomic nervous system is the part of your brain that controls all of the organ activities that you don't have to think about. Your heart rate, the level of closure or opening of blood vessels, all of the other visceral organ functions, how much the liver, it has to filter blood and take out toxins and things of that nature. The kidneys have to do all sorts of things with dumping fluids into the urinary duct, sodium, chloride stuff. I mean, imagine if you had to spend your whole day thinking about those things. It would just be impossible. So we're really blessed that we have this primitive autonomic nervous system that can handle all of those things. And the autonomic nervous system, like many things in science and even philosophy, is kind of a dualistic design where we have a sympathetic branch and a parasympathetic branch. And to simplify things, we usually think of the sympathetic nervous system as our fight or flight side, and we think of the parasympathetic as our rest and digest side. Those are extremely oversimplified ways of describing those, but it gets the point across. And it seems as though we would want to eat food and get into our parasympathetic state, since we usually refer to it in a quick sense as our rest and digest side. So it's kind of like, where do you want to spend, or where do you want to be from an autonomics perspective at different points of your day? Do you really want to be groggy and sleepy while you're trying to exercise? Probably not. So you probably shouldn't eat a giant meal right before you exercise, because now you're going to have to digest that thing. And look, like, hey, maybe in primitive times you just found a huge amount of food and you jammed it in your mouth, and guess what? Like, a saber-toothed tiger wants to eat the same thing, so you have to run away from it. So sure, our body has to be able to, like, eat and then move, or you'd be in big trouble. But is that really optimal? There's things that can be done, and then there's things that are optimal, and they're usually two completely different things. Right. So it's just sort of like the sympathetic nervous system is associated with driving for activities of daily activities, when you have to go about accomplishing things. So exercise, like really almost any physiology book that you read, if it's describing exercise in a general state from an autonomics perspective, exercise is a sympathetic induced phenomenon.
Actually, Pat, can I ask a question, actually?
Sure, yeah.
So, like, a lot of times, like you were saying about like the saber-toothed tiger, I've been hearing like every once in a while someone would post about like fasted training, and like they would say, oh, fasted training is good for you, or like fasted training, like besides the fat loss anyway, they're saying like, oh, this is what we did back in like paleo times, or this is what we did back in the day, and like we adapted from it. I think I can't remember who it was, but somebody was talking about how training fasted actually depletes from your like it's an added stressor, so like something you wouldn't want to be. You don't want to train fasted because it depletes from your stress load, your buffer. Like, do you think that's true?
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that what we need to be able to display as an organism is plasticity, and you need to be able to have substrate and metabolic plasticity. And what I mean by that is, show me that you can eat food and that you can mobilize that. Like, it's not real hard to mobilize food that you've just ingested. If I drink a Gatorade, I now have glucose in my blood, and boom, I can send that glucose to a working muscle cell, get it right in there. That's what most Americans have going on. We constantly have fairly high blood glucose levels because we're usually eating small meals throughout the day, because that's what we've been told. Or we have a sports drink with athletes right before they play or during their timeouts and things like that. But what I want you to be able to demonstrate is whether or not you can actually mobilize stored substrate during an exercise bout. So you have all of this food sitting on you. Can you actually access it? Obese people are essentially people that have no ability to access stored substrate, aka their adipose tissue. That's just, they have millions and millions and millions of calories of food sitting on their bodies that they can't access. Now, they're the extreme, but it's really important for athletes to be able to use food that they've just eaten as well as stored substrate that's on their body, And if we have athletes that are looking to make body composition changes, particularly losing body fat, the only way you're going to lose body fat is to first and foremost mobilize it from stored places. Why would you mobilize it unless you needed to use it? We need to create a demand in order to drive supply for that demand. So fasted training is potentially a way to begin this process. It's just going to coax our body into establishing this mobilization phenomenon quicker than other methods, quite honestly.
So Pat, do you train fasted?
Yeah, I train fasted. Sometimes I train with eating before. I train both ways because I want to be able to, I want to show myself, hey, I can do it this way, I can do it that way. I don't want to get used to anything. I want to train, okay? I want to, it's like, I think Boyle did it really well when he talked about Poliquin's article way back when, and basically saying training is this process of doing things the same but slightly different. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to do CrossFit. I don't want to do a random workout of the day every day. And I want to, if I'm training for something, like for, you know, I'll pick the exercises I like. I'll pick deadlift, I'll pick press, I'll pick whatever. And then maybe I'll vary it by sets and reps or rest time or things of that nature. I don't need to vary everything. I don't need to vary a different exercise every day, a different set and rep thing. I need to have some steadiness, but I need to have some variability as well. Same thing, I think, with food. Like, for me, it's kind of like pick the food choices that make sense. So I do that from an elimination perspective more than anything else. But then I want to vary the times where I eat. Like, I don't want to always eat. I don't want to always train fasted. I don't want to never train fasted. I want to do a little of this, a little of that. You know, animals aren't thinking, well, it's breakfast time, I better get in, you know, this level of macros. Like, they're just like, I woke up and probably, I don't know, maybe I'm hungry. I'll go get food. Like, they just eat when they're hungry. But they probably have to contend with, like, maybe they get food at the time when they're hungry and maybe they don't. Maybe they have to do something physical to actually acquire their food. You know, sometimes I think about exercise as probably being a lot like hunting. You know, we're probably hunters that get frustrated because we live in a weird modern society. But it's kind of like, if I wanted to eat, I'd probably have to go out and get my damn food. Okay, maybe I'd have to actually chase something down and kill it with like an aggressive physical move. And maybe, you know what I'm saying? No, but like that makes some level of sense to me, that you would have to perform physical output to be able to actually get the food that you're going to eat.
It's not already laid out for you.
I mean, I think like the only comparable thing to that is like getting into like a traffic jam before you get to Chipotle, like lunch rush.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you just think about how weird it is, the differences, but I think that it ultimately comes down to some level of variability. I think that's where it all comes back to, and I think the other thing is this, that like we just have a mobilization crisis in this country. Like the recommendations that have come from on high have created an effect where it's like, well, it's been 3 hours, so to be healthy must eat next small meal, and like, is that so good? Not really, because now you never are actually mobilizing anything from inside your body. Like, you're always bringing food from outside in, and then that food is probably being used to power cellular reactions in your body.
Yeah, to build on that, actually, during college, I used to I think during college we all like experiment with getting huge. So like I bought this like glucose powder, and I would have it probably like 4 times a day. In the morning, I would have like it with oatmeal, water, and protein. I'd have like another shake with glucose powder, and my insulin levels were like, they would not drop. I got it fasting, and it was sitting around like 105, 108. I was like, what the hell? I was fasting for like 24 hours.
Yep. There's something called the Maillard effect in chemistry, which anytime glucose levels in the blood get higher than 85, what is it, mgs per deciliter? I think that's what it is for the unit of measure. But anytime you get up to 85, there's a chemical reaction that causes blood glucose to bind in a rather haphazard manner to proteins in the blood. It's just a chemical response, but it does ultimately create on some occasions, not in every binding occasion, but it creates advanced glycation end products, AGEs. And those are things that we have come to realize are extremely problematic from a health perspective. And, they always talk about that Alzheimer's in many cases is diabetes of the brain. And what we do know about Alzheimer's is that it's like there's a significant amount of AGEs that are collecting in the gray matter of the brain. So eating small meals throughout the day is fairly abnormal from a historical perspective in the overall evolutionary timeline, because it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense from looking at wild animals. They oftentimes gorge and not eat for a little while. But from a chemistry perspective as well, that Maillard effect is pretty interesting. So you think about it, what is the criterion for pre-diabetes? Is it 105 at this point? Is it 100? Somewhere in that, or
I think it's I don't remember what it is. It might be in between.
We can find that online.
Yeah, but you know what? From a chemistry perspective, you go over 85 and you're already causing the chemical reactions that we typically look at as the start of this cascade. So that number that we give to diabetes is fairly arbitrary, and who the hell knows where that really came from. But from a chemist perspective, 85 is where things start to actually change. So if you're up over that range, you've got some stuff taking place that maybe is not really desirable.
Yeah.
Right.
But, the overall essence of that article was that, there's all these cycles in nature. We have the light-dark cycle. We have the feeding-fasting cycle. We have the sleeping-waking cycle. We have circadian rhythms built into our brains that are supposed to be recognized and appreciated, and that developed over the long haul of evolution. And that maybe the autonomic situation fits into that. Just maybe, since circadian rhythms aren't something that we're like consciously in control of. So maybe there's a way that we can influence our autonomics from a nutritional perspective. And really, like, what do we know about foods that make you groggy? Well, usually they're loaded with sugar. And maybe that means that sugars are things, if you don't want to fall asleep and go parasympathetic, you could probably put those off till later in the day. And if you do want to get groggy and go to sleep, well, maybe you could just throw down some serious sugar. It's kind of like turkey somehow got a bad rap at Thanksgiving. Oh, it's the tryptophan. No, it's not, jerk. It's probably the freaking 15 biscuits you had and like 12 pounds of potatoes, and then the pie that you had that was loaded up with fructose and glucose and flour and everything else. You're probably tired from the 8 pounds of pie and ice cream.
Yeah, I know, that's so true.
Yeah.
Not even counting the booze.
Right, yeah. So let's stop blaming the tryptophan, please, for the love of God.
Over magnification on a specific item.
Yeah. But look, carbohydrates are good for you. There's athletes need to consume carbohydrates. Ketogenic diets for athletes. If you're a fat athlete, maybe it's a good idea for about 2 weeks to kind of get the metabolic processes, again, of mobilization going. Ketogenic diets are the exact same physiological model as endurance exercise performed for extended periods of time. It's the same physiological model as total fasting. It's the same thing. It's just this mobilization response. It's a sympathetic driver. So I'm just trying to I don't want to be in that total. I'm a strength athlete. I don't want to completely mimic an endurance athlete, but I also don't want to be fat. So how can I have the best of both worlds? I don't know. Maybe kind of sort of live in this mobilization dominant time period for a little while, and then swing it over at the end of the day when I want to go to bed towards a storage mindset. Because parasympathetic insulin is storage.
Go
ahead.
So with all this under our belts, you clearly, you train fasted, and then I'm going to assume you obviously train right after that. Then what is the plan afterwards? You specifically, or obviously we're digressing away from the article.
Sure.
You eat. How do you?
It's like this. Why does fasting seem to make some sense? Well, the time when we all fast, well, not everybody. I do know some power lifters, like fat power lifters, that like to have shakes ready for themselves in the middle of the night in case they wake up to have to pee. But generally speaking, everyone fasts all night. You go to bed, you don't eat for a bunch of hours, okay? One of the things associated with sleep is the growth hormone pulse that takes place. Is it sleep or is it fasting that causes the pulse? Well, I don't know. Let's take a look at the literature on fasting. Oh, wouldn't you know? You get a big growth hormone pulse if you do things or if you fast. Fasting and growth hormone tied together. Why? Well, because growth hormone is a powerful lipolytic agent. Growth hormone really does a tremendous job of activating hormone-sensitive lipase at the plasma membrane of an adipocyte. So there is a reason why we are producing growth hormone while we are asleep, because we need to feed our cells while we're asleep. And growth hormone will ultimately cause fat to be released from fat cells and feed the rest of your cells in your body fat. So if I train, okay, this is the beautiful thing about thinking, and I don't know if there's research about this one, but this is just a good thought process to take from a physiological perspective. Okay. If I train and I do good hard work, I'm going to spike growth hormone. Okay, so if I do this in a fasted state, maybe I get a little double bang for my buck. Not saying you do, I'm not saying you don't, I'm just saying this is an interesting thought process here. Regardless, you will get a growth hormone response, and that growth hormone will do a tremendous job of mobilizing fat, which you can feed yourself. I think that we just rush to the gun with this anabolic window in the post-exercise environment, like you must consume foods to get this. Well, you just busted up a bunch of proteins in your muscle cells. So you've got free amino acids floating from doing that. And now your growth hormone is going to mobilize fat, so you're going to be consuming some fat. You're feeding yourself your own fat, and I'm just saying, like, I think that we rush the gun with these things sometimes. I like to wait post-exercise to eat some food until I'm hungry. I eat when I'm hungry. I don't eat as soon as I'm done exercising because I just got done exercising. I wait for my body to tell me when it's ready to eat. I think it probably knows better than I do or any literature piece does. So that's my thought process in regards to post-exercise feeding. Listen to myself.
I have to agree with that. Like eventually, like after my workouts, I'm just too, like, I'm not hungry at all. I can't just like cough it back off, throw it back off. It's just doesn't feel good like eating food right after.
Yeah, and you are feeding yourself. You're feeding yourself from the inside, your own stored stuff. And hey, maybe some people are better at feeding themselves than other people. Maybe they're better mobilizers. Obese people are the worst mobilizers in the population. People that are very lean are the best mobilizers in the population just from their genetic differences. So, I mean, who knows? I don't have any literature at the top of my head to support this. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good deal.
So, off of that, I just have maybe one or two more questions. Good thing or bad thing for me. So with all that, being laid out, obviously that's specific to your own thought process. If you were to progress a client or athlete, how would you present this information? Would you say this is the only way, or like?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I would just say that, look, there's a lot of ways that you can get lean. Unfortunately, they all involve some level of sacrifice. I'm sorry, but you can't get to your aesthetic goals or your body weight goals unless you sacrifice something. Something has to go. And there's a million things that it could be. Maybe it's sweet taste. Because, hey, if you do go lower carbs, the literature on that stuff, it's slightly all over the place in some ways, but people tend to lose weight when they drop carbs from their diet. And then, a lot of the conclusion sections of those articles say things along the lines of, well, the low-carb group consumed fewer calories because there was a greater satiety response due to switching the macros to more protein and fat. And it's like, it's almost like the researchers don't make a big deal out of the satiety response. Okay? And I'm like, whoa, there was a bigger satiety response? That's a big deal. Because if you're hungry, you're going to eat. It's just that simple. So maybe that's a good way for some people to go. Like sometimes if it's like heavy guys, I'm like, hey, do you like steak? And they're like, yeah, I love steak. I was like, do you like bacon? They're like, yeah, I love bacon. I'm like, well, what if I told you, do you like eggs too? They're like, oh yeah, eggs are great. I'm like, well, do you think you could eat maybe like eggs, bacon, and steak like 3 times a day? And they're like, yeah, I could totally do that. It's like, well, if you want, you could possibly do that for a couple of weeks, see how it goes. They're like, really? Yeah, sure. Give it a shot. See what happens. Okay. Versus like some females where it's like, hey, bet you like to eat a bunch of small meals a day, don't you? And it's like, yeah, I do. Of course I do. It's like, yeah, I know. Of course I do. It's like, well, what kind of snacks do you like? And then that opens up that floodgate of like, they like to go to Panera and have like muffins or whatever the hell. I don't even know. People
could be anything. Could be anything.
Yeah, you ever get that invite to Panera? Like people are like, yeah, we're gonna go to Panera, and it's like, oh, come on, dude. Like of all places, we're gonna go there. You gotta be kidding me. You're really killing me with this Panera request. But it's kind of like, all right, well, geez, where do we go with this one? That one's always a challenge to me. Like the small meals throughout the day person is a challenge, but it's just kind of like, well, I try to figure out what their protein sources are. Mm-hmm. And for typically, I just try to find ways where you can increase their protein at every meal. Because it's just so satiating, and instead of the muffin or the whatever the bread-based carbohydrate or pasta-based carbohydrate snack that they're going to have, because they're just never satisfied, they're never full. Mm-hmm. Just try to figure out, like, just talk to them and listen and figure out what protein sources they actually like, and then say, hey, have more of those. But then there's other people that I think they've been there, done that, they've tried a few things, and they're looking for something different because nothing works, okay? Just nothing works. And it's like, well, because I do think that if we're talking about any kind of a fasting approach, like this is not something I go with as number one suggestion for people. It's no way, man. Like number one suggestion is making better food choices by a large margin. This is like page 2 suggestions, where it's like this person has tried some things in the past. They've tried nutritional interventions, and if something hasn't worked or whatever, all right, well, maybe you could try this. All right, give this a shot. And I think it also works. Look, I think this one works for a lot of trainers and coaches because we're busy as hell in the morning and sometimes early afternoon. And you just maybe you don't get you probably have to be at work really early. Maybe all you get is coffee and something else, and then you're going until maybe 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon, and maybe you didn't get a break, and you don't have to feel guilty about it. You don't have to feel guilty about not eating for 3 hours, and I just think that for me, for my timing, lifestyle, I got used to it. It was very helpful. And I just pushed the envelope with it a little bit farther, and guess what? The wheels of the wagon didn't fall off. It kept rolling, and I was okay. So then I was like, you know what? This works for me. It really works for me. And then the more people I started talking to that compete in strength sports, because a lot of guys that compete in strength sports are also trainers or coaches on some level. Shocking. All right, but it's like a lot of these guys are like, yeah, with my schedule and lifestyle, this, that, and the other thing, like it's really hard to eat, and yeah, I've just kind of stumbled into it, or I heard, Rob Wolf talk about this stuff, or I heard John Berardi talk about this stuff, and I tried it, and what do you know? It It worked pretty damn good.
Right.
So
the thing that I found, I played with intermittent fasting maybe in 2011, and I'm sure Henry can provide some insight as well. You have a lot more information about nutrition than I do. I think what it is just logistics. Like, what are the best logistics for you? If that's the real obstacle for you. I think talking about just regular general population, I think it might be along the lines of finding the triggers, if I can use that word. Like, what are your triggers for eating X food, and then just looking to replace or find different foods that are a little bit better of a choice than whatever you originally have. That's the approach that I take. I could obviously use a lot more refinement with that, but I seem to have some relative success with that. So, what is your input on that, Pat, on that approach?
yeah, I think you gotta. That's the number one thing I do is you gotta ask people what they're eating and what they like to eat, and then they always identify a few things that are like bad. I don't know if bad choice is the word. Well, no, screw it, bad choices. I start hearing about bread and muffins and quite honestly just heavy flour-based products. And I'm like, okay, if we can dump this stuff, and I've seen it over and over again with guys that have to compete for weight class-based strength.
Right.
And I think that's a good test. Wrestlers and strength athletes, like, well, I have to be this weight and I have to be strong. So what do you think I should do? And I'm like, well, honestly, I think you should dump gluten. I think you probably need to look up what that is, because I guarantee you don't know what it is. And and then, like, I tell these guys, I'm like, look, I want you to crush sweet potatoes and meat. Can you do that? Can you crush meat and sweet potatoes all day? And these are the kind of guys that are like, yes, I will do that. And then, like, you send people like Snapchat photos of just like potatoes, just like a big, huge sweet potato bite, something like that. But it worked, man. Like, everybody I've told to do that has literally just gotten very lean and stayed strong and made weight and all that kind of stuff. It's worked many times. So I usually look for flour-based products that people are eating, and I'm like, I just try to think of other alternatives for them. Like, and usually I just go with like a sweet potato or a potato or something that they like that isn't going to drive that sort of inflammatory effect that a lot of flour products do.
Yeah.
Right. So if a client or athlete just straight up says no, like, I don't feel like doing X, whatever you're saying, like, I don't feel like fasting, how would you respond to that?
Fine. It's your decision. You can, like, I've seen people lose weight eating the worst things in the world, like, because they cut calories. It's like you can eat crap and lose weight because you can reduce calories. But then you're going to go crazy as if you had to listen to that ringtone for 24 hours a day. Like, imagine being locked in a room where that ringtone goes nonstop on every like a 12-second loop of that, and then it stops for like slightly different amounts of times, like 6 seconds, 12 seconds, 4 seconds, 8 seconds, and then it repeats again for 12 seconds. Like, what I try to do with people, I try to give them the best approach to reaching their body composition goals that will not make them go psychotic.
I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
That's great.
And it's like, what would make me go crazy? Well, honestly, for me, if I don't get to eat something sweet during the day, I'm not a happy person. Like, I like to have some carbohydrates. I like to have some kind of a sugar taste at some point during the day, and I miss it if I don't have it. Like, I've done keto diets, and then I get like a refeed day or whatever the hell you call it, and you get something sweet, and then I just go off the rails, man. Like, oh my God, like, now I'm gonna eat like 8 pounds of cake. So that approach just doesn't work for me. I need to have something sweet. I need some carbohydrates. So what am I gonna sacrifice? Well,
right.
You know, like it's like you have to figure that out on an individual basis. Some people don't mind sacrificing one thing. Some people tremendously mind one other thing. So, but ultimately, the worse your diet from a qualitative approach while losing weight, the greater your craziness increase.
Your psychological.
We should do a graph on this.
Yeah, it'll be like the
You ever see
crazy
that?
matrix. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen that fly around on Facebook, like crazy.
Weird too. It's done by people who I think they're in like the firearm industry. They're not even in like the business or finance. They just like made up this graph. It's pretty good.
That guy definitely had a sidearm on his hip. Like that guy was awesome. But that is one of the best.
You saw that video?
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
I think we can. I can arrange that. That's a pretty easy graph to make.
Yeah.
But seriously, like, I think that Gary Taub's book is a great book. Just just to read it. Like, I'm not going to tell you that it's all right or all wrong. Just read the damn thing. Make up your own mind. I don't want to tell people what to think necessarily. But one of the best parts for me, from my perspective, reading it was. There's some chapters that talk about like dissenters from the military during the Vietnam War era, and they were put into research groups, and some of the groups were like one group was put into the semi-starved group, and I think that group got to consume like 1,800 calories a day, which was considered semi-starved. That doesn't even sound that bad, does it? Like that
sounds pretty good actually.
And then the other group was put into total fasting. Like they didn't feed these people food for like 100 days or something like that.
Did you get water? Like what?
Yeah, they got fluids. They just didn't. They literally were not fed food. And I like the really interesting.
This wasn't an experiment. This is like torture.
No, this was an experiment. Okay, and I'm telling you, it's in the book. Like I'm not. So the group that did worse was the semi-starved group. The starved group actually was just kind of fine after 48 hours. The reason is because their insulin levels remained constantly lowered, so they were able to mobilize stored substrate at a steady level, and they were feeding themselves their own body, basically. So they had a fairly like uniform amount of energy transfer between their cells versus the semi-starved group. It was like they got they weren't getting enough food, but it was just like insulin up, down. So insulin was kind of like making their energy go here and trapping it and then keeping it there, and then it would leak out, but then they'd get more food. So a number of their cells remained semi-starved while other cells were getting some food, basically.
Right.
But the psychological ramifications were fascinating. The semi-starved group, like a couple members of that group did self-mutilation to try to get out of this study. One person escaped from the actual facility, and they found them down the road in a convenience store in a corner with like food, like they had like got like a wild animal. Like they tracked.
That just sounds unreal.
I'm telling you, it's in the book. I haven't read it in a little while, but this is the stuff that stays. And then there was like, they recorded their behaviors, and the semi-starved group was constantly talking to each other about food, and they were dreaming about food. And the total starvation group, not so bad. Like it was like the conclusions were sort of insulin levels were the primary driver, and shared energy, just constant energy going between cells. And I don't remember the names of the studies. It's in there though.
Right, I'll link to that book, so we'll see if I can. On Amazon or anything like that. So
sure, like I'm just always thinking about the psychological stuff. So if some people psychologically cannot deal with hunger, those are the people I'd probably put on a keto type approach, because keto diets and starvation are the same model. They're the exact same model. And if you've ever done a ketogenic diet, sometimes you don't even realize it. You're like, have I eaten? I don't even remember. Like, I'm just not hungry. But it's because you never really have insulin levels spiking, And insulin will essentially create like a nutrient partitioning effect where some cells are receiving nutrients and other cells not so much. All due to insulin sensitivity. And if you don't exercise, well, then your insulin sensitivity of muscle cells is extremely low because contractility is what seems to drive like the entire GLUT4 transport mechanism, which is either insulin-based or non-insulin-based. But if you don't move, your muscle cells basically are not particularly effective for binding with insulin. They just aren't. There's no reason. They're like, well, we don't do anything, so why do we need energy?
Yeah.
But they still are doing some stuff at a low level metabolically. So they just can't ever bring stuff in. So they're like semi-starved because their insulin receptors can't compete with fat cells, which are just like these dominant insulin cells. And the more cells in your body that exist in a semi-starved condition, the hungrier you are. So if you can't deal with hunger, drop your insulin levels really, really low. If you don't mind being hungry, I don't mind being hungry. I can go extended stretches of hours being hungry, but I really need to eat something sweet. I backload because that's kind of my psychology.
Got it.
Yeah. So I think
Interesting. I think that's a really good place to quote unquote stop. Where can we find you at the next seminar before the next HPLF seminar course? I think there's another PRI course coming up.
Yeah, I'm going to be attending the Vision course within the PRI course catalog, and that's going to be this coming Friday and Saturday in Nebraska. So I'm really looking forward to heading out to Nebraska. Of course, I picked the wrong airport. I picked the Omaha airport rather than the Lincoln airport. I was in a rush booking my flight, and so my boy Matt Malloy is going to have to drive an hour to come get me in Omaha, drive me back, just because I'm really bad about some things, and paying attention to details is one of them. But we got a whole crew out there. We have like a Springfield College reunion. It's going to be myself, Ethan Grossman, and Matt Malloy. And we're going to be joined by our good friend from the San Francisco area, Matt Tripp. So we're all sharing a room, like a suite kind of deal out there in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I know that those other three guys are going to be out there a little bit earlier to be treated at the Huruska Clinic with their Prime treatment protocol, and they're also going to be doing some observing. But then Vision will be Friday and Saturday, and that's another one of those advanced level PRI courses that gets into some very powerful sensory stimuli.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll yeah, definitely. We'll connect after you maybe take some time to absorb the information from that course. I'm sure you'll be on another reel.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Puns aside. That's great. Awesome.
Hey, I'm not afraid to make horrible jokes, man. Sometime I'll tell my floating head joke at some point during one of these podcasts, and I will thoroughly disappoint the 4 or 5 people that watch this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks, Henry, for coming on. Thanks again, Pat, for coming on as well.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Thank you, Henry. It was great, man.
All right,
All right,
good.
guys, thank you.
Bye, guys.